Welcome, yogis. Thank you for joining this Chaturanga fire workshop with Yogi Wade. Very excited for our practice today. Let's begin, as we usually do, by steadying the mind and preparing the mind for an intensive practice of our day. So we do this by drawing our energies into this present moment, letting go of anything that may have come before, letting go of any ideas of what may come after, and living fully and completely in our abilities and our energies that exist in this moment, this now, in this current experience. Often we use our breath as an anchor to draw our energies inward. So we might notice the natural breathing, noticing what sort of breath feels really good in the body right now as we sit steadily and remain still. Stillness often brings out an antsiness or a desire to move or to find emotion. And in that antsiness, we might begin to notice the mind wavering. Take a moment. The mind might be bouncing back and forth, left and right, between all of these different ideas and thoughts and feelings and emotions. Let's, for a moment, close our eyes. Imagine the mind as the flame of a candle. Flame that might flicker if it becomes distracted like the wind in a room. Imagine you can shield that little candle from the wind. The flame can grow steady and still in a windless room, tending to the flame, to a constant, consistent flame. Finding a consistent effort in our intention to remain mindful within the body, within this practice. We'll try to maintain this mind state of the candle in the windless room. At the same time, we might bring a little bit more fire energies into our breathing. First by expanding the breath, by breathing a little bit deeper, a little bit fuller. Breathing in all the way into the very bottom of the diaphragm. Letting go as the belly button draws towards the spine and lifts. Putting just a little bit of intention behind the exhalation. Allowing each exhalation to let the belly draw in and lift. Each exhalation, a little bit more intention. Breathing a little bit faster. Drawing in a little bit more warmth. A little bit more fire energy as we begin to awaken these core muscles and drive them in and up with each exhalation. Eventually finding the fire breath. Using the lungs like a bellows, as though you're trying to stoke the flames within you. And as you do so, you might notice, or try to notice, the subtle warmth that draws to the surface of the skin, to the muscles in the shoulders, in the back, in the core, in the hips and the legs. You might really fire up these core muscles. And then release as we let go, allowing ourselves to draw our hands to our heart and setting our intention for this practice to find a consistent effort, a consistent, steady flame of energy that we can light from within us throughout this workshop, throughout these 2 hours. We can have a steady, consistent, solid effort of energy. And we can seal our intention to cultivate this fire energy from within us with an Om. Take a deep inhalation with me. Let's begin with our hands at our sides, lifting the legs long ways, so we can find a seated staff pose, the Dandasana posture. It's okay if the knees are a little bent if they need to be. We're pushing through the heels and pointing the toes towards our heart, opening with the heart, broadening through the collarbone, but drawing these ribs in so the spine is perfectly straight and perpendicular to the ground beneath you. Let's draw the hands to the outsides of the hips as we push into the fingertips. We might take a little bit of weight off of the lower back, allowing ourselves to push through the outsides of the arms and squeeze the outsides of the hands together while we lift up top of the chin and reaching to the very top of the head towards the ceiling, reaching the very tailbone towards the mat. And drawing in from the core, drawing in from the outsides of the arms and the shoulders. Finding a little bit of energy here in a steadiness. We might exhale and release, lifting those arms all the way overhead. Drawing the hands to the heart. Let's draw the outsides of the hands together, so the little finger sides of your palms are squeezing together with the most effort. And the other fingertips can push together, but let's keep a little bit of weight off of this side of the wrist opposing the thumb. That way most of the weight is in the fingertips and behind the knuckles. We can draw the shoulder blades onto the back, draw the fingertips together, and isometrically engage those knuckles together, pushing into those fingertips. Noticing if we can get that engagement through the outsides of the triceps with as much strength as we have in the arms, lifting up through the top of the head. We might be able to fire up the core, draw those ribs in while we lift. And exhale to release, hands to our sides. See if we can again keep that action in our grip through the fingertips and from behind the knuckles. As we have the hands at each side of our hips, drawing the strength through the outsides of the shoulders as we lift and lengthen through the arms, drawing the tailbone towards the mat and the top of the head reaches for the ceiling, but really squeezing together from the outsides of the hands and lengthening from the side bodies. Finding a little bit more. We might exhale and release. We'll walk the hands forwards, flipping the feet. Maybe we can roll forwards to our plank pose. We're going to start in a simple plank, drawing the weights into the fingertips and behind the knuckles. And in our plank poses, it's important that we know the external rotation of the shoulders, because this protects the wrists. It draws the elbows closer to the hips, if we were to Chaturanga. It allows us to find all the muscles that are like just beneath the shoulders on the back, drawing those back muscles into the side body and into the front, and using the core muscles to pull the ribs in towards the back muscles. We're integrating shoulders into back. We're integrating back into core. We're pulling the glute in, pushing through the heels, drawing the outsides of the legs together. And finding our strength here, let's bring our knees down to the mat. Taking a moment in a child's, we will get to our chaturanga. We will build up to it slowly and steadily. Finding our first downward facing dog as we reach to the fingertips, bowing the heart towards the heels, lengthening with each inhalation, lifting the tailbone a little bit higher, bowing the heart a little bit lower, drawing the feet towards the hands and the hands towards the feet. Let's look forwards, step hop, jump to the top of the mat, finding our Ardha Uttanasana, halfway forward fold. Our halfways, we want to draw the heart towards the toes, but look up. So the tailbone is lifted and the top of the head is lifted, but the heart is finding a little bit of a back bend. Let's exhale, Uttanasana, fingertips down to the mat or to your blocks. We release the tension from the back of the neck. We push through the outsides of the hands again, filling out the muscles in the mid-back. And then we will lift, rising up tall, lengthening through the outsides of the side body, using the outsides of the arms. Drawing the hands together and squeezing them together overhead. And we will draw the hands to our heart. For a moment, before we even find our chaturanga down on the mat, let's find just the chaturanga arms. See if we can understand where the shoulders are meant to align in the Chaturanga Dandasana. If we pull the hands out in front of us, palms out, if we reach the shoulders forwards, the shoulders are protracted here. Noticing how the back has to really round to do so. If we draw the shoulders behind us, the heart pulls forwards. Sometimes the ribs poke out when we do this. This is when the shoulders are retracted. Notice this is a little bit of a back bend. So retraction is more of a back bend. Protraction is more of a forward fold. If we reach the arms overhead and push the shoulders towards the ears, this is when we're lifting the shoulders. We really only want to do this in our handstand pose. So if we are here, we might draw the shoulders down the sides and reach through the arms so that the shoulders are pulling away from the earlobes. And notice that when we do so, it forces us to pull the ribs in. See if we can keep the shoulders here while they're pulling down away from the earlobes. Drawing the hands out forwards and keep them neutral, so we don't want to be retracted. We don't want to be protracted. We want to be this neutral place. We don't want to be pushing up, we want to be pulling down through the sides. Finding this, we might draw the elbows in to our sides until the tricep muscles line up with the muscles along the back. So we find this energy as we lift and open the heart and pull the ribs in, lifting through the top of the head, lifting the toes off of the mat, pushing through the heels, lifting the backs of the calves, the fronts of the thighs, pulling in the glute. Pulling the mid-body in and up. Noticing this muscle, notice where the ribs, the lower rung of the ribs, come into the top layer of core muscles. The top of your six-pack. Pull these ribs in. But notice how when you do so, if you look at the back body, there is a muscle here that you can draw out through the sides and around to the ribs. So we're integrating the core into the back, integrating the back into the core. So if we maintain that action, filling in the muscles in the mid-back, we draw our hands to our chaturanga arms, elbows at our sides, trying to keep the triceps level with the back, but filling out the tricep muscles, filling out the back muscles. We should be able to generate a good amount of warmth just in this form, just standing without weight bearing on the arms. You can even perhaps imagine this is our chaturanga and see if we can find our form here, a form in which draws the muscles from the triceps into the back, goes tricep to the back of the shoulder, into the mid-back, and the mid-back is pulling these mid-back muscles towards the core around the ribs. And then all of these lower core muscles are lengthening and lifting space between each vertebrae in the spine. And the glute is pulling in, pelvic floor is lifting the backs of the thighs, extending as we root down to rise up. We're as tall as we can be. Again, let's take another Chaturanga in the air. You can do these against the wall as well if you prefer. That might show you a little bit more of the motion of Chaturanga Dandasana. The idea is to move as slowly in our Chaturangas as our shoulders are capable of holding us up forward. This does not mean going to the extreme of our capabilities, but it means finding what challenges us and challenging ourselves just a little bit more, but within the moderation, so that we grow, but grow steadily. Find these triceps aligned with the mid-back muscles. Finding the back muscles aligned with the core. Let's maintain that when we reach. These arms overhead, palms reaching behind us. Opening the heart. Drawing the shoulders behind the ears. Let's exhale as we bow. We're going to look up. And exhale to bow. Starting with our classical sun salutation, we're going to step the right foot back. Finding the right knee down to the mat. Anjaneyasana, the low lunge pose. Drawing the right hip forwards, left hip down, bending into that left knee. Tucking those back toes behind you. And again, we're going to work on these shoulders. Drawing shoulders down and behind us, but not pinching the shoulder blades behind us, but integrating the shoulder muscles into these back muscles and integrating the back muscles into these core muscles. We can reach the hands down to the mat, thumbs pointing behind us, noticing that external rotation on the shoulders. Let's find an external rotation on the front leg as well, so drawing that left foot further out to the left isometrically. Noticing how that might pull this right hip a little bit more forwards, and how doing that might pull the glute up and the belly in. Everything integrates into one another. We might even try our Chaturanga arms here. So noticing where these shoulders, where all the muscles on the outside of the arm can reach those elbows towards the hips. We might start with the arms in front of us. Engage the core, using all the core to lift up through the top of the head, finding heat in the mid-body, and then slowly and steadily flexing those triceps as we draw them into shoulders and shoulders into back and back into core and core into glute and glute into leg. Finding everything integrating and everything growing steady and together as we reach the arms forwards. We might draw the hands together and squeeze them together as we reach them up overhead. Noticing here how the outsides of the shoulders, outsides of the armpits can draw in and forwards, and the fingertips can squeeze together. And again, this is that same action where we should be drawing like that. Outside of the hands, squeezing that together with as much effort as we would like to be challenged with. Doing so allows us to straighten our arms, but also to have that external rotation on the shoulders. Let's exhale as we bow the hands to the inside of this left foot, moving the left foot, maybe a little bit out to the left, swaying into those hips. We might lift that back knee off of the mat, finding some little hip circles, finding the weight on the fingertips and behind the knuckles. And here is a place to test our grip, to see if we can hold our weight onto those fingers and onto those knuckles. So let's play with where we place the weight into the hands, especially while we have this foot in front to hold a little bit of the weight. So we can experiment a little bit. Have the fingers spread. That gives me a little bit more control. I like to be trying to point isometrically, trying to turn the fingers further out to the sides, and lifting the back heel of the palm, this little part of the palm here. Keep weight off of that so that the weight is really into the knuckles and kind of fingers. Let's step this left foot back as slowly and steadily, consistently as possible, finding our plank, finding the hands shoulder distance apart in our plank, pushing into the fingertips, pushing into that space behind the knuckles, lifting through the tail so that the heart and the tail are parallel to the mat. The fingers are reaching towards the toes. We're lengthening through the core. Let's bring our knees down to the mat. Knees, chest, and chin. Finding Ashtangasana. This little back bend that allows us to release from the mid-back. You can wag the tail. You can take a little weight off of the hands, off of the wrists. Let's draw the heart forwards, finding our cobra. Using the core to lift the ribs off of the mat, perhaps even lifting the hands. We can use the hands to push length, drawing the heart forwards, but use the core to lift up. Let's tuck the toes behind us and find our way to a downward facing dog. The Ardha Mukha Shavasana. Drawing the heart towards the heels. Lengthening as we squeeze the outsides of the arms in. Lifting to the tailbone. Finding as much length, drawing the spine towards the space between the thumbs. And drawing the tailbone as high in the air as we can get it. Often we get there by squeezing the mat between the hands and feet, as though we're trying to buckle the mat between them. Let's lift the right foot up, stepping the right foot between the thumbs. Ideally, without lifting the heel of the hand, we step the foot in. It takes a lot of muscle on the side of the core. Gripping the left knee down to the mat. Finding our low lunge, Anjaneyasana on this side. So begin to warm up this hip. Drawing external spiral on this right foot. Drawing these shoulders towards the hips once the hips are steady. And again, we do protraction, we do retraction. Find the neutral. We lift the shoulders towards the ears, and we draw the shoulders down towards the hips. Noticing if backs of the shoulders, just beneath the shoulder blades, are integrating into these back muscles. If they are, we pull these back muscles that fill out the mid-back, integrating them into the side bodies, and into these top parts of our six-pack that pull in the ribs. Part of our fire breath as we draw the belly button in and up. As we pull those ribs in, we pull all the vital organs in and up to the rib cage. We draw the elbows down to our sides. Noticing if we can integrate those triceps into the shoulders and into the back. Integrate that back into the core into the glute into the leg, lifting up from the very top of the head. Everything is integrating. All of these muscles are working together to strengthen one another. We should be able to find enough warmth and strength on the outside of the triceps just by holding these triceps flexed to our sides. We can perhaps lengthen and slowly and steadily draw those elbows in. Noticing if we can be drawing the outsides of the arms down towards the hips. Shoulders are pulling away from the earlobes, integrating all of those muscles. So the back muscles strengthen the shoulders. That's what we're doing here. We can draw the hands to the inside of this right foot, lifting the left knee off of the mat, finding some little hip circles on this side. Playing with our grip again. Playing with trying to figure out where we should be putting our weight behind the fingertips and behind the knuckles. We can sway the hips forwards and back, or left and right. But really pushing into those fingertips to try to figure out where the center of gravity can be held on the hands. Often we can push our weight a little bit more forwards than we think we can. So try that. Especially try it if we can lift this right foot off of the mat. Slowly bring it back to our plank. Finding length and strength in our plank. And we're going to bring knees, chest, and chin down to the mat one more time. Chaturanga, the 8-pointed pose. Allowing this to give the wrist a little bit of a rest, a little bit of a moment to refine the grip. Maintaining this back bend as we draw the heart forwards into our cobra. We're trying to find this lift again with the core muscles. And the length, using the triceps, noticing the triceps lined up with those back muscles once again. And then we'll find our down dog. Head on our feet. Reach into the fingers, lift into the tailbone. Finding a straight line between the tailbone and the backs of the arms. Seeing how much length we can find in that line as we really push through the fingertips. We're going to step the right foot forwards between the thumbs without lifting either heel or either hand. Keeping the left knee lifted, left heel lifted. Draw this left hip forwards, draw this right hip down. High lunge. Ribs pull in. Arms reach up. Squeezing the outsides of the hands together in our high lunge. I'm going to bend the hands to the heart, drawing strength to the backs of the triceps. Noticing that strength, integrating those triceps together as the palms reach forwards. Bending the arms, reaching the elbows towards the hips. As the shoulders integrate again into the back muscles. Let's see if we can keep that shoulder integration, and this time we're going to add a bind, keeping the fingers behind the back, open the heart a little bit more. You might find the shoulders a little bit retracted here. If we open the heart, draw the ribs in, and again, be working those muscles just beneath the shoulder blades, drawing them in to the core. We bow for the weight of the humble warrior. You can spin that back heel flat if you prefer, but I recommend staggering the feet enough that the left shoulder can be as forward as the right shoulder. So people tend to like to do this pose like here, and it's a much more engaging pose to draw the length between that left heel and the left shoulder so that both shoulders are parallel to the front edge of the mat. So if you're over the leg, that's okay. If you get the shoulder to the inside of the thigh, that's even better. But be drawing those shoulders down the back, squeezing half our weight into that back foot. We might exhale and release hands to the inside of this right foot. Swaying to our hips, again finding our grip. We're going to step this left foot forwards, outsides of the hands, finding ourselves in a squat at the very top of the mat. Noticing if we can draw those hips further behind us, opening up the heart forwards in front of the hips. And finding wherever this left foot is, rooting that into the mat as the hands, we can lift the hips just a little bit above the knees. The hands come to the inside of the feet. We're going to step this right foot back, finding ourselves in our high lunge on this side. If we lift that back heel, we can stagger the feet about hip distance, stepping into that front knee. Shoulders pull away from the earlobes. We can lift the arms overhead. Integrate the outside of the armpits, pulling them in and together as we squeeze the hands together. We can slowly draw the hands to the heart, flexing the backs of the triceps. Keeping the side bodies long as we lift up through the top of the head. Let's lengthen the arms in front of us, drawing muscles Skin to muscle, muscle to bone through both arms. As we slowly bend the elbows to each side of our hips, drawing that strength from the outsides of the shoulders down the outsides of the arms. So we have this lengthening through the insides of our side bodies, and this lengthening through the outsides of the arms. And noticing how that might broaden the collarbone. Noticing how, as we broaden the collarbone, that integrates those shoulders into the back. We might try lengthening one more time. And exhale as we draw those elbows in until the triceps are flush with those back muscles. Filling out those muscles on the back, training those back muscles to protect the spine. See if we can keep those muscles there while the hands come behind the back, opposite finger, opposite thumb on top. We can spin that back foot, back heel down the mat if we like. But what's important is that we don't just fall down here, but we draw the right shoulder parallel to the left, parallel to the short edge of the mat. So we should be able to pull half of our weight onto the back foot. And in doing so, we draw the right hip forwards. And we draw more length through that right side body. And that length integrates that shoulder into the tricep. We should be able to squeeze these hands together behind the back to really integrate all of these muscles together. Let's release the bind, hands coming to the inside of the left foot. We can sway into these hips, giving ourselves a moment. Perhaps we can step the right foot to the outside of the right hand, finding ourselves again in our squat. Swaying to the right and swaying to the left. Drawing the hips further behind us and the heart further forwards. Let's bring the hands down to the mat, lifting through the sit bones, finding our ways to a forward fold. As we exhale, we bow. As we inhale halfway. Exhale and bow. And we hinge from our hips to rise, growing tall. Lifting and lengthening. Finding our ways to our center. Noticing that the breathing has changed through our practice. And remembering to be intentional with each breath, drawing this belly in. We can even, for a moment, take a hollow body breath. So if we find maybe a high chair pose, sit bones a little further behind us and spreading, bending the knees. See if we can find our belly. As we inhale, we fill it all the way up. And as we exhale, we draw the belly button in and up. We should be able to take like a fake inhalation as the belly button is in as far as it goes and up as far as it goes. We take an inhalation that just doesn't take any air in, but it sucks all of these organs in and up. As we do so, we might notice the ribs. If we notice our ribs, we need to take all of these muscles on the top of the core and pull them in, to pull these ribs in. As we do so, we're requiring these back muscles. Noticing what that is, noticing how important each muscle integrates. Let's try one more hollow body breath. And we release. Let's reach the arms overhead. Draw your shoulders behind the ears as we open the heart. You might take a little crescent if we take the left hand outside the right wrist. Then fold to the left, releasing any pressure from that wrist. You might come back up the center and flip the grip, taking that right hand to the left wrist, folding to the right, drawing the left shoulder behind you as you look to the ceiling and release any tension from that wrist and from that side body down to the hip. Lifting ourselves up to our center, we'll find a back bend. and bring the hands back to the heart. If we have blocks for our practice, we're going to find an exercise that might help us realize a little bit more of this core energy from the Chaturanga. So let's actually start with the blocks, the medium height up. Find them long, so that this will be as long as level with the spine. So the idea is from our forward fold. If we were to step back into a plank, finding all of those muscle integrations that we talked about, we might find a straight line between the heels and the top of the head as we draw the fingertips towards the feet and draw the feet towards the fingers, igniting all of the core, igniting everything from the center. So notice how this is a very straight line, or it should be a straight line between the heels to the tailbone, to the shoulders, to the neck, to the top of the head. It should be in a very straight line. Now the idea is that when we lower down for Chaturanga Dandasana, you want the heart and the tailbone to be parallel to the mat. You want everything to hit the mat at the same time. And so, if this is a straight line for a plank, we almost hinge just a little, very subtle bit, keeping the tailbone level to the shoulders while we lower down. Because we want to hit these blocks with the lower belly and the heart simultaneously. All right, let's come down and lower down, finding ourselves on our ribs, keeping that length from the tailbone, drawing the shoulders into the back muscles. Let's draw the hands down to our sides and see if we can really integrate this core, drawing those ribs in, lifting the top of the head long, seeing how much of this core integration we can find. We're using the core to lengthen through the spine. The core should be activating all of the muscles on the back of the spine. If we draw these hands down underneath the shoulders, we might be able to lift a foot and push through the heel, drawing all the muscles on that side of the lower psoas muscles, integrating those into the glute and into the mid-back, and setting that foot down. We'll try the other foot, pushing through the heel, integrating the shoulders into the mid-back, filling the muscles in the mid-back and drawing all the psoas muscles up and in and around the side. We can even perhaps take our hands, if we get both feet down, take both hands, notice these muscles in the back, in this mid-back, fill these muscles out, draw these muscles down the sides and around the bottom of the ribs. Fill this out with our strength. We should be able to find a lot of engagement just by sitting here. This little chaturanga, we might start with the hands an inch above the mat as we find our length. And exhale as the hands come down to the mat. Let's lift up into a plank. Again, finding this straight line, as straight of a line as we can find, as we tuck the chin and lengthen, pulling the belly in, pulling the ribs in, lowering down as slowly and as intentionally as we can find it. Seeing if we can find the place where the belly and the heart touch the blocks simultaneously. Finding it again and again until we can find that simultaneous action, pulling these back muscles in towards the spine and around to the sides. We might even reach the arms overhead this time, palms up like a Superman. And we'll draw the hands down to the mat, pushing the fingertips, lifting ourselves up. Let's release. Taking a moment. Might put the shoulders on the back, maybe bind the fingers behind us, opening our heart. So, we have learned how to integrate these shoulders into this chaturanga so that this whole mid-body, everything from the shoulders to the lower psoas muscles to the glute, acts as one interconnected, integrated muscle. So let's allow ourselves to find some real chaturangas and see if we can use and exercise these strengths through our very core, the strengths that hold our spine strong. So we might have the hands on the blocks, squeezing the weight into the fingertips and behind the knuckles, finding our length, finding this straight line between the heels, very top of the head. And as we begin to lower down, again, drawing away from the outside of the little fingers, we bend the elbows until that heart and the lower belly is parallel. Again, drawing these shoulders down towards the hips. As we lower down, we'll find our chaturanga and lift ourselves up. We can even do it from our knees. We should be able to find just as much strength in the core for working from the knees. That might actually allow us to have a little bit more focus on what it is that we're building up. So if we can even make it really easy, we would like to have the hands on the blocks, and the blocks as tall as they might go, and be on the knees. When I said really easy, chaturanga should never be easy. Because the stronger we get in our chaturanga, the more challenging, more isometrics we have, the more core muscle we have, the more our resistance is. We're using muscles to strengthen muscles. So here, again, we might find this external rotation through the arm muscles. So all these muscles that are drawn from the outside of the finger are wrapping around the arm, wrapping around the tricep and bicep, and integrating into the shoulder and finding this spiral action. So keep this external rotation, keeping on our knees. We might lower the elbows just until the triceps are flush with those back muscles. And as much as the triceps are flexed, make sure that we're flexing those mid-back muscles. And if you're not sure if you're doing that, think if you're drawing the ribs into the back. You're trying to pull the heart into the spine. We're trying to integrate all of this, lifting all the vital organs up and integrating all of these muscles, everything here, integrating all of these muscles into this. We're integrating these muscles into all of this. Always remembering that integration as we play with our form. We might try a variation with our toes behind us, off of the knees, seeing if we can find that same integration, triceps level with the back muscles. Again, pulling the shoulders away from the earlobes, and we'll lift ourselves up and release. You can always continue to use blocks if you need to. I will not call them again for the standard chaturangas. Let's take a moment in a child's pose as we lengthen through the back body, reaching the tailbone to that space between the heels, wiggling the fingers as far forwards as they go, noticing that length from the outsides of the armpits. We'll set all 10 fingers under the mat. Externally rotate the shoulders as we pull the heart forwards. Let's find ourselves all the way onto our bellies. Taking this moment here, as we're going to work on this external rotation. Noticing these fingers on the mat as they're trying to point further out to the sides. Isometrically, we're going to lift ourselves up into this gentle back bend. So this might be a low cobra. We're using the core muscles to give ourselves height. We're using the arms to just integrate the triceps, drawing the heart forwards. We might try a few of these. From our cobra, our back bend. We're going to tuck the toes behind us and lift ourselves up, finding our downward facing dog. Taking a moment here, resting pose. And again, see if we can draw the outside of the armpits inwards and together. And draw the elbows closer to the hips, or at least pointing towards the knees. Can we squeeze the mat between the fingers and toes? Can we find our weight under the fingertips and behind the knuckles? Can we bend the knees? Preparing for like a crouch. Ready to crouch and spring if we jump forwards. Finding ourselves in our forward fold as we exhale and release. Letting go of any tensions from the back of the neck, from the jaw. Pushing down into all four corners of both feet as we lift all the way up through the tailbone. Let's bend the knees, finding Dandasana, the chair pose. I like to have palms rotated up towards the ceiling, noticing what that does to the shoulders. Drawing the heart forwards and the shoulders back. Let's bend the hips, allowing the hips low. We might be able to look down and make sure we can see our toes. We might lift those toes up and off of the mat. Let's draw the hands to the heart, seeing how much of this core integration we can find here. We might even find our arms in chair. Noticing those triceps, drawing all of these side body muscles strong. As this grows long and this grows long, we're integrating the side bodies to strengthen the triceps. We're integrating the psoas muscles to strengthen the shoulders. And pulling the ribs in, everything is strengthening the front body. Let's inhale as we rise. Reaching up, opening our heart. And exhale to release. Letting the arms dangle. We might give ourselves a little pat on the back. Finding our windmill. Noticing the wind between the fingers. The playfulness of the pose, remembering what it feels like to be a child. Let's let the arms dangle to a pause at their own pace. Find yourselves top of the mat as we reach these arms overhead. And fold. This time in our forward fold, it's totally okay to bend the knees, but again, we're drawing the length through these outsides of the arms, or from the outside of the side body long, through the outside of the armpit grows long, through the outside of the tricep. So we're pushing the little finger side of the hands, especially down into the mat. Finding our length, pushing into those fingers so we get half our weight on the hands, drawing those hands in and together, and see if we can fill out this back muscle just from here. We might bend the knees a little bit more to really be able to find that length. But we should, especially as we squeeze these hands together isometrically, when we're pulling everything in, we should be able to lift through this muscle that's sort of right behind where the ribs are, opposite the ribs, beneath the shoulders. We can integrate that strength into those psoas muscles, into the glute, and into the legs. So we find our chair pose, preparing for our sun B, Surya Namaskar B. We'll draw the hands to the heart. Crossing this left elbow over the right leg into a prayer twist. Hands come to center. Open heart to the center of the hands as we look to the ceiling and exhale. Let's inhale ways to our center. Find yourselves in a squat. And crossing this right elbow over to the left in a prayer twist. Opening the heart to the center as we look to the ceiling. Exhale to release. Come back to our center. And bowing the hands down to the mat in front of us. Bend the knees. Feel that muscle through the mid-back as we squeeze the outsides of the hands together. Weight behind the knuckles. We might lift the heels. Maybe we lift one foot. Maybe we lift the other foot. Seeing if we keep at least half of our weight onto our hands. Seeing if we can maintain the strength at the back. And maybe we can imagine ourselves jumping both heels into the glute. Maybe we can really find our ways to jump into our plank. Finding ourselves in Dandasana, drawing the fingertips towards the toes, finding as much length between all four limbs, straightening and lengthening the spine as much as possible, tucking the chin, lifting up through the top of the head. Let's lower down slowly and steadily, Chaturanga Dandasana. Letting the heart come down to the mat. You can lift the ribs off of the mat isometrically, using the core muscles, perhaps even binding the hands behind the back, finding the locust pose, trying to draw the heart up and forwards. We might release our bind, opening up to our cobra, tucking the chin, tucking the toes, up dog, and downward facing dog. Reaching to the fingertips, reaching to the heels, lifting to the tailbone, and drawing those shoulders outsides of the armpits, pulling together, shoulders pulling into the side bodies and down. Finding as much length. I'm going to lift the right foot. Bend the knee, stack the hip, look underneath the left armpit, see if you can see the right toes. You can wiggle the right hand a couple inches forwards. Finding as much length here as we have before we step the right foot forwards between the thumbs. Integrating, setting the left foot perpendicular. Finding our warrior two. Bending into that right knee. Drawing the right hip towards the left heel. Drawing the left hip towards the right heel. Integrating again with the shoulders. Down the sides. Down the back. So outside the arms are long. Side body's underneath. The arms are long. All of these muscles in the back body should be filling out. Especially as we draw the heels together and lift to the top of the head, reaching to the fingertips. We should be able to use the core muscles to lengthen the spine. The more we do this, the more challenging it becomes. Especially as we bend into that front knee. Warrior two. We can flip the palm, reverse the warrior, opening the heart to the ceiling, drawing the left hip forwards, drawing the right hip back, keeping the bend in the right knee, lengthening to the right side body, lengthening to the left side body, and exhaling to our warrior. Integrating the shoulders, they're not like out, they're integrated and rolling down the back. Bending into that front knee. You can cross that right arm over the right leg, reaching the left arm forwards. We can perhaps bring that right hand down to the inside of the foot or to a block, but always make sure that we're not reaching this left arm straight up. We want to drop it forwards, drawing it up, rotating the heart towards the ceiling, finding all that integration through that left shoulder. Maybe we can even flip that palm, draw the left thumb towards the right hip, and draw that right hand underneath the leg, seeing if we can bind the hands or find a strap. And seeing if we can use the strength in the back of that right tricep to lift that weight off of the front foot, drawing the back foot in and forwards. Finding our binds here that open that left shoulder, opening the heart, lengthening the spine. Let's exhale and release the left hand to the inside of the foot, lifting that right hand all the way up. Stacking the wrists, stacking the shoulders. We're going to find that back heel down to the mat, 45 degrees for our warrior one. Squeezing those hands together. Finding a gentle back bend as we reach for the wall behind us. And then exhaling as we bow, placing that right hand behind the right heel. We draw our weight onto the fingertips and knuckles as we lift that right foot into a three-legged plank, testing our three limbs to lengthen the spine, seeing how long we can keep this side body pulling this right leg in. As we point to the right toes, let's slowly and steadily step the right foot back to meet the left, finding ourselves in a plank as we lengthen the spine with our limbs. Let's lower down slowly, steadily, as slow as we've been all day, hovering in Chaturanga
an inch above the mat, integrating everything in the center body before we draw the heart down and release. Toenails come down to the mat. We can use the core muscles to open the ribs up. Perhaps even binding the hands, opposite finger on top, behind the back. Using the core muscles to lift the ribs, drawing the heart forwards, tucking the chin, and lifting up. The locust pose, Savasana. Let's release these hands down the mat, keeping that strength in the core as we lift up into a cobra or into an up dog, straightening the arms. Noticing external rotation of the shoulders as we find our Shavasana, lengthening and strengthening. Breathing fully and completely into the very bottom of the diaphragm. Drawing a little bit of intention, a little bit of fire energy at each exhalation to regain our strength as we lift this left knee, pointing the left toes, stacking the left hip, looking underneath the right arm so you can see the toes, seeing how much long length we can find on the left side body, maybe even wiggling these left fingers a little more forwards. Let's step the left foot forwards between the thumbs, finding the back foot perpendicular as we wingle up to the warrior two. Drawing the weight from the outside of the back foot in, external rotation on the left toes. Right hip pulls towards the left heel, left hip pulls towards the right heel. Noticing the hip shoulders just over the hips, ribs pulling in. I might even make sure that our shoulders are in the right place as though for a chaturanga before reaching the arms out long, looking over the left hand. Finding our strength here as we use the core to lift through the top of the head, pulling that tailbone towards the mat, pulling the head towards the ceiling, lengthening the arms to each wall. Finding our length and our strength while we flip the left palm, reverse. Drawing that right shoulder up, drawing the left shoulder behind you, opening the heart into a back bend. Finding length through the lower side body so it doesn't collapse, but it opens up. We're going to draw the left forearm into a side angle. The forearm can come over the left thigh as the right arm reaches up and reaches forwards, lengthening to the outside of the armpit and drawing the shoulder onto the back. Finding the straight line between the right shoulder and the right hip, between the right fingers and the right toes. We can stay here, we can bring the left hand to a block, or the left hand can down to the inside of the foot. As we reach forwards with as much length as the side body, shoulder, and hip will allow. Rotating that right shoulder further behind us, stacking shoulders, finding our length. Perhaps even adding the bind if we flip the palm, hook that right thumb around the left hip, then draw this left hand underneath the left leg, so we can find the fingers. Using that strength of the left side body to lift up as we look up, trying to take weight off of that front leg as we squeeze the weight into that back foot, lengthening and lifting, strengthening and breathing. As we pull these ribs in, we lengthen a little bit longer, drawing as much strength as we have in the posture before we release. Finding our weight onto our hands as we lift this left hand to stack the left shoulder on top of the right, drawing the right hip forwards, revolving warrior, or revolving our high lunge, I suppose. Let's bring that back heel down the mat 45 degrees to find our warrior one. Virabhadrasana. So the back foot can be about hip distance. Draw that right hip forwards. Keep the weight on the outside of the back foot. Shoulders integrate. Arms expand. I like to squeeze the hands together overhead. You can draw those hands to the heart. And down to the mat. lifting that back heel, finding our weight evenly on the hands, behind the knuckles, behind the fingertips. Finding our weight on the back foot, squeezing the three limbs together as we lift the left foot off of the mat, seeing how long we can hold that leg into the side body, seeing how tight we can find the length of the inside of the left leg, holding as much length between the two arms and the back leg. We're going to slowly and steadily lift that left leg out to the left and slowly bring it back to a plank, adjusting the hands as needed. Finding ourselves in our plank, pointing the elbows towards our hips, integrating those muscles to fill the back. Let's lower down slowly and steadily, this time moving even slower yet. Finding what works for you until we hover an inch above the mat, triceps integrated into the back, and let the heart down to the mat. The palms can come down to our sides and our hips. We can rest the chin for a moment. We can bind these hands behind our back, lifting the toes and lifting the heart. Finding our back bend, finding the strength in the back bend. We'll release the arms. Keep this back bend while we find our cobra. Drawing heart forwards, tucking the toes. Finding our up dog. And our downward facing dog as we paddle through the feet. Reaching through the fingertips. Breathing all the way in, all the way out. We can take the left hand and reach it for that right heel as we look underneath the right armpit and lengthen through the right side body, finding this twist. Squeezing the right fingers towards the left foot. Let's bring the hands to our dog, taking a moment. And then we can take this right hand to the left heel, looking underneath the left armpit as we lengthen through the left side body, drawing the left fingers towards the right foot as we squeeze the mat with the core. Find our hands in our dog. We can push into the fingertips and behind the knuckles. We can bend the knees. And again, fill out those muscles in the mid-back, keeping the arms as straight as possible, keeping as much strength ready for the fingers. We use our fingers as our brakes. When we crouch and jump the heels into the glute, setting the feet down. Finding our ways to our forward fold at the top of our mat, however we get here. Finding our chair pose, Dandasana, as we reach these arms all the way overhead. Hands coming to the heart. Balancing our hips. This time we're going to bind the hands behind the back, opening the heart, letting the hips sink low. We can lift this left knee into a standing balance. We can set the left foot in Warrior 3, a Virabhadrasana 3. We can draw the heart parallel to the mat. And let's step the left toes down, finding our high lunge with the bind, keeping the shoulders open as we lift that back thigh and bend into that front knee. We can bow the shoulders to the inside of that right leg. Let's release the bind, drawing the left hand to the inside of the leg, stacking the right shoulder on top. Finding shoulder over shoulder. You can find the inside, outside of that left foot down to the mat as you spin the front foot onto the knife edge of the foot, working into this right hip. Finding this length through the lower side body. Using that foot as a kickstand, you can wiggle it back, or you can perhaps lift it. We're going to find our Vashisthasana, the side plank. So you can always use the foot as a kickstand. What's important here is that you're lifting this lower side body, finding the length through the lower side. and integrating that shoulder into the obliques. Perhaps even moving at that hand overhead. Or releasing the hands down to the mat, finding our way to our plank, and meeting me in the downward facing dog, however you get there. We've been working our Chaturanga, so you can find it from your knees, you can find it from your blocks, you can find any variation, or even just a plank as you're building your Chaturanga stamina, and we've done a number of them. Let's step the left foot forwards between the thumbs. Lifting that back thigh off the mat as you bend into the left knee. We're going to start binding the hands behind the back. Opening the heart, tucking the chin, lengthening, bowing the shoulders to the inside of that left leg. It should feel really good on the shoulders, should feel like a nice release from all that work we've been doing. Breathing fully and completely into those shoulders. Breathing all the way to the very bottom of the diaphragm. Let's release that right hand down to the inside of the left foot, spinning that back foot on the knife edge of the foot, and lifting that front foot, wiggling it a little further back until maybe we can lift it up, or maybe we just step it back, or however we find our Dandasana, the side plank pose. We should be lengthening from the right heel to the right fingers, finding this strong. So this right hand is pulling towards the right foot. We can even lift the left foot if we'd like, trying to draw the heart open. But again, noticing the muscles in the mid-back, filling out all the back muscles with the core muscles. Trying to draw the core muscles around the heart, or trying to draw the back muscles towards the heart, and the core muscles from the ribs around towards the spine. Let's release both hands down to our plank pose, taking a moment in our plank, and finding that strength through the core. Let's lower down. Meeting me in dog. Breathing all the way through the arms and all the way through the heels. Let's look forwards to the fingertips. Drawing this left foot forwards between the thumbs as that right heel lifts. You can bend into that left knee, finding those hands again behind the back. As we open the heart, perhaps adjusting the length to shorten your stance a little bit so we can find the center of gravity over the front foot while we lift the back leg off of the mat, finding any variation of your warrior 3 that works for you today. Noticing if it's different day to day, practice to practice, that is okay. Squaring the hips towards the short edge of the mat and opening the heart till it's parallel to the ground. Lengthening through that back leg, straightening the lower leg. Let's lift ourselves up, sending it down into a bound chair, and we can release the bind, letting go, reaching the arms all the way overhead. And letting go. We should feel pretty warm by this point in our practice. We should have all of these arm muscles like ready to work for us. Hopefully, our wrists still have some effort in them left. If we need to work on our wrists, we can get all the fluids flowing through the joints. If we flail the wrists, we can also work on drawing the fingers down to the ground as we point the palms forwards. One side, and then the other. We can find the chin if we draw the little finger down to the rib cage, to the last part of the rib cage. See if we can have the thumb pointing towards the hip. We should be able to draw this forwards, perhaps on one arm, perhaps we get both arms. Sometimes it's a bit of a trick. It should allow us to draw the shoulders behind us and open up that space through the outsides of the hands. Taking a moment as we take some deep breaths that should deepen that strength through the metacarpals, through the fingers, through the hands, through the wrist. I'm going to take one more wrist stretch before we continue. And this is the true handstand pose, which is palms up underneath the feet. And we use the muscles from the arms to pull the hands out from the feet and use the toes to push all the carpal tunnel bones down towards the fingers. So that way we can create space in the wrists. We should be able to create length between all of those joints in the hands. And if you're really lucky, you might be able to get a nice little pop that might release some kind of tension you may be holding on to in there. Let's exhale and let go. Find yourselves at the top of our mat, standing tall. Find the feet together. Bring the arms like a chaturanga. Remembering how to integrate all of these muscles that we've now been doing all these chaturangas. Can we make as much effort in a standing, not weight-bearing arm posture as we have in chaturanga down on the mat? So, in other words, can we draw as much length, as much strength through this tricep? Can we pull as much effort on the shoulders, integrating them into the back? Can we pull these ribs in and lift through the top of the head? Can we find this warmth here and find a way to make this challenging, no matter how strong we are, because we're strengthening our muscles with our muscles. Everything is an isometric. So notice if while we're here, if we're really filling out these back muscles, see if we can maintain that. Maintain these chaturanga arms. We're going to hinge forward from the hips, finding almost a standing Dandasana where we began. But this time we should find a lot of integration from those arms into the shoulders, into the back. We should be able to really push into those feet and lengthen through the spine. Let's exhale, bringing the hands down to the mat, but keeping the muscles on the back. So we're really rounding the muscles from the mid of the spine towards the side bodies, pulling the ribs in while we push the weight into the fingertips, lifting the heels up and off of the mat. And before we were lifting one foot and then the other, and maybe even both for a moment or two. This time, see if we can tap the toes to the wrist and lift it up. And then tap the toes to the wrist and lift it up. Perhaps even one foot and then the other. Finding any variation, but noticing which muscles here allow you to lift. So we're really using these muscles in the back to get ourselves as much height through the tailbone as we can find. So we want those hips lifted. The closer you get the hips over shoulders, the more balanced you might find yourself. Let's step it back, find our ways to a child's pose. So, our chaturanga is actually the fundamental arm balance posture. So, if we're doing any kind of chaturanga, you can always imagine this is very basically an arm balance. It's very basically a crow pose or a pendant pose. So we're going to work on the pendant pose now here for a moment, the Dandasana. Find ourselves from a child's pose as we lengthen through the side bodies, releasing tension from the neck. Finding our length, squeezing the outsides of the hands together. We'll bring the hands a little bit closer so we can bend the elbows just a little bit. We'll bring the hands a little bit closer so we can bend the elbows a little bit more. Perhaps even tucking the toes behind us so we can find a little cannonball push-up. We'll bring the hands a little closer to the heels. So we should be able to push up as much as we're pushing back. So I don't want you just pushing back, but I want you to imagine you can lift one foot and then lift the hips. And we can imagine this is like pushing up from a chaturanga. So the other variation is, if we start with lifted hips and with straight arms, imagining this like a plank, like a super short plank, with the left side body tucked in, or half of a cannonball here. See if we can lower down like a chaturanga. Set those toes down. Then we'll lift the hips. Drawing length through two straight arms, lifting that right heel into the right glute, tucking that right knee into the chest. Finding the weight into the fingertips. And find a chaturanga arms, taking as much weight onto the arms as we can. Lifting it up and setting it down. We might be able to find a place where if we have straight arms, maybe we can bring both heels into our glute. And the idea here is that we should be able to tiptoe these feet forwards and set it down. Finding our way to our Dandasana. You might notice our Dandasana could have changed throughout this practice. Our posture might feel easier, it might feel a little bit more, might feel like we're at the end of our endurance. That's okay. Find what we can find to strengthen our form. So you draw these muscles outside the arms, pushing the outsides of the hands down outside of each hip, pushing through the heels, toes point at the heart. We lift and lengthen, finding space between each vertebrae as we reach through the top of the head. And exhaling as we release. Let's reach both arms all the way overhead, lengthening through both side bodies, pushing through the heels, walk the heels as far forwards as they'll go. And then hinging the hips. Let's see if we can bow, perhaps reaching the feet, perhaps even just reaching the ankles and walking the hands forwards, finding what's accessible. As we exhale, allowing yourself a moment to release the tensions. Finding length in the spine and length in the backs of the legs. Releasing tensions from the neck, from the jaw. Inhaling as we lengthen, and exhaling as we reach the top of the head towards those toes. Finding our Dandasana. Let's exhale and release, bringing the hands down back to our sides, sitting up in an L-sit, a Dandasana. Perhaps we can lift those feet up, almost like a boat pose in a Dandasana. If we lengthen, the toes should be about the height of the eye. We should find this strength through the core. You can point the toes. I like to keep the heels flexed. Imagine you can keep those heels lifted, and then you can lift the hips and set them down and lift those heels. Dandasana. Dandasana. Finding the alternating postures, the lower core and the upper core. Perhaps even imagining if you can try to find one foot lifted and then the other foot lifted while the hips are lifted. Perhaps even both feet for a moment. If we bend those knees into our chest, we can give ourselves a little hug, tucking this into this little cannonball. I like to cross one leg on top of the other. When we push the weight into the hands, this is another point where we can always use our blocks, might give us more height. But if we lengthen through the outside of the arms, we might be able to draw those feet back, finding our ways into our plank. We can meet in the dog, however we would like to get there. Finding our length and maintaining that length while we walk these feet forwards. Seeing if we can stack the hips, long over the shoulders, bend the elbows as we bow, finding this forward fold. You might lift one leg and then the other, but finding our way onto the fingertips as we do so. So we should be pushing our weight a little bit more forwards. We might tuck this right leg outside the right tricep. Imagining this like a chaturanga as we're drawing the elbows towards the hips. This is going to be the Asta Vakrasana. So the idea is we can wrap this right leg around that right arm, and then maybe we can tiptoe this left foot forwards and around until we can find the feet hooked, squeezing the inner thighs together, and then find a Chaturanga Dandasana. Straightening the arms, ideally. The arms don't have to be straight though. It often helps if that arm is bent like a shelf. We don't have to use our legs. It might make it easier. The other variation for getting into that posture is if we're cradling this right hip, drawing the leg in. We might be able to take the left hand over the top of the foot to find the arch of the foot, wearing the leg like a backpack around the shoulder. And then we find the hands, bend the left knee, crossing the left ankle over the right. Find the arms chaturanga distance apart, but noticing that the hips and the shoulders are perpendicular now. Instead, we're really squeezing the strength of these legs together, but we've always been squeezing our thighs together every plank. So really, the only difference is finding where the center of gravity should roll forwards until the weight is behind the knuckles and the fingertips. And when we do, we straighten the legs. Asta Vakrasana. We may be straightening the arms, ideally. You can even link from one side to the other if you would like. If you can, that is always a fun challenge to do. We're going to get into it in both ways on the other side as well. So, we might find our ways for a plank, lowering down until we really feel that integration of the triceps into the back body, and maintaining that back body, maintaining those muscles, filling out the mid-back. We lengthen and strengthen, walking the feet to really a short dog. So we can find our weight on the right foot, tucking the left knee outside the left tricep. And as we tuck it in, we might be able to wrap this left heel around into the inside of the left arm. And we might be able to tiptoe with this right foot forwards and around until the toes can hook. And when they do, we straighten those legs. We can bend the arms a little bit to make a shelf if that's easier to lift ourselves up. Or we can keep the arms straight, which is much more challenging. And we can exhale and release or jump switch to the other side or whatever we need to do, because we're going to find it from the other seated posture, from cradling this left hip. Perhaps for some of you, this will be easier to get into. For others of you, it won't be. But if it was too easy, it would not be meaningful. So let's try to wear this left leg around the back of the left shoulder like a backpack. We can even take that right hand around the top of the foot to the fingertips, finding the arch of the bottom of the foot. As we straighten the leg, drawing that right shoulder behind the back, and using the muscle on the right arm to pull this left hip further behind us, and that left leg further onto the shoulder. And we're here to see if we can cross this right foot on top, finding the thighs squeezing together to pinch the shoulder, and find the hands about chaturanga distance, about shoulder distance apart. Should be able to find the weight behind the fingertips, behind the knuckles. And there's even another variation that we can do. If we just lift the feet, we should be able to find the left side body in like a crescent. If we just set the feet down and lift the hips We should be able to find this like a side plank. We might work one lifting the feet, and then lifting the hands, and then try to lift both. Perhaps even adding a chaturanga if we like. It can be challenging. We like our challenges. Let's find ourselves in a Dandasana, butterfly posture. So you open the feet like a book, rolling the calves forwards, rolling the thighs back, integrating the triceps towards the back body as we open the heart and bow the heart towards the toes, keeping the spine as flat as possible, drawing the hips further behind us. And exhaling as we lift back up to our center. We might inhale and lengthen, growing as tall as we are. This time we'll tuck the chin, reach the top of the head towards the space in front of the toes, finding a little bit more of a forward fold. And creating a little more length in the back of the neck as we tuck the chin into the heart. And we'll lift ourselves back up to our center. See if we can pull the heels in, even just a little bit closer to us. Just one more time, we'll find even more of a forward fold. If we tuck the chin, look to the belly button, reach the back of your head towards the heels. So we find as much length through the back body as is accessible. And we should be integrating those muscles on the triceps, into the shoulders, into the back. Let's exhale as we release. We have one more arm balance work on today that is very much the most similar to Chaturanga. It's also a favorite of the fire postures. This is Bakasana, the crow pose. And so the reason we do this after our butterfly is that this is a posture that does not take any more strength than a Chaturanga. However, it does require very open hips in order to not have to compensate strength or flexibility. So as long as we can get these hips behind us, so if we were able to have ourselves in this Dandasana squat, we open the hands to the heart, open the arms like cactus arms. We should really feel this in the hips, opening the hips further behind us. Keep the triceps integrated into the fronts of the calves. While we lift the heels off of the mat and onto the tippy toes, we can lift the hips over shoulders, and lift one foot, and then lift the other foot. Perhaps even just playing with one foot and the other foot like a little dance. Or if we can lift both feet, find it helps to find the way onto the fingertips and knuckles. Really working the fingers. The fingers are what keep you balanced. We're squeezing those legs together onto the outsides of the triceps. The arms can be a little bit bent. The more bent they are, the more like a shelf they are, the more that you just have space to just hold your balance. But ideally, if you're comfortable holding your balance here, then we work on straightening those arms, squeezing the outside of the hands together. And then we can even find a crow too. We can lift the knees into the center. And that would be the linkage to our pendant pose and our Dandasana. We're going to take one last Dandasana posture, finding the outsides of the feet with the hands. Inhaling as we lengthen, and exhaling as we bow. Releasing the hands to our sides. We're going to lift up to the very top of the head. Let's roll onto our backs, from the arms out to a T. We bend the knees into our chest. And rock the feet to the right as we look to the left. keeping the left shoulder rooted on the mat. Breathing with the left side body and releasing and surrendering to the gravity beneath you. Let's bend the knees into the chest, rocking side to side and rolling on the left side body, rooting the right shoulder into the mat as we look to the right. Releasing any tensions from that right side body as we let go and surrender to gravity beneath you. Let's get back to our center. Squeezing the legs together. Bring the hands down to the lower back as we lift those hips over the shoulders, pointing the toes to the mat over our heads, tucking the chin as we find our plow pose, our last forward fold, lengthening through the neck, lengthening through the back, the upper back. Taking a deep breath into each part of the spine as we release, oxygenating every vertebrae, breath by breath. Finding ourselves laying long for our Shavasana as the legs grow out, the arms to our sides. You might roll the shoulders underneath to open the heart, broadening through the sternum. Finding a hand on the heart, and a hand on the belly. Taking a moment to notice the rhythm of the breathing. Notice the rhythm of the heart beating. The syncopation of the rhythms of the heart and the breath. Noticing the subtle uniqueness of each breath of air, the unique experience of each beat of the heart. Let's find our awareness in the present moment, in the now, steadily, consistently aware of every inch on the surface of the skin, aware of every cell in the body, and that energy, that battery, that fire within every muscle. Aware of all the potential for the strength that we have within each limb, within every finger and toe. Within the front body, the core, the belly, the chest, shoulders, and the back. Drawing our awareness into a journey through the limbs, noticing one limb, one muscle at a time. So we take a deep breath into a bicep and breathe to oxygenate the tricep, allowing each exhalation to let go of the effort. Breathing to create an ease. Having used our effort to let go of the tensions that these muscles may have been holding on to, we can take a deep breath into each calf muscle, into each foot, into each thigh and hamstring. Breathing in a way that gently and steadily and subtly
feeds the flames, the energies within each cell, in every muscle, as every cell is always respirating, always breathing. Find the energies in the muscles, and imagine them a candle in a flameless room, a steady, constant, reliable source of energy. And we can cultivate and nurture that reliability simply by breathing steadily, by exercising our awareness of the body, our awareness of the mind. When the body becomes the candle in the windless room, the mind too settles, the mind lets go of its effort. Just as the body teaches the mind to grow still, to find transformation in the pose between the poses, transform one breath at a time, one posture, by this moment, So the body teaches the mind that we can transform our position, our posture, our own mental awareness and effort, moment by moment, breath by breath, one intention at a time. We transform who we are in this momentary, ephemeral posture, always changing, always growing, always developing through our efforts and through our practice. We might transform one more time as we bend the knees into our chest, roll onto the right side body from our Shavasana, finding ourselves in a fetal position with the knees at the heart, knees at the chest. Finding the arms a pillow, we lengthen the breathing, finding a sense of being renewed and restored and transformed. As we lift ourselves up to a seated position, drawing a smile to the face, eyes closed, having become who we are in this moment, having cultivated a steadiness and a consistent, reliable effort that we can carry through with us, we can carry this energy throughout our days and our weeks. Perhaps observing our posture, having grown warm, having grown steady, having cultivated our powers within ourselves, and our powers over ourselves. We take this moment as a moment of gratitude for ourselves, just to be grateful for this time we have had to practice together. To be grateful for all of these ancient masters who have passed down this wisdom, this technology of these postures, all these thousands of years down to us. And with gratitude for all the causes and conditions within the universe that have brought us to be here today, everything that has happened to bring us into this beautiful, perfect present moment of true awareness in its natural form. And in that form, I bow to the universal light and love in you. Namaste.